Welcome, I'm Darren, and I'll be your guide today as I look at the 1994 and 1996 Fleer hockey sets. This is pretty misleading because when Fleer made their first hockey set for the Fleer brand itself, they labeled it as a 1995 Fleer set, but understand this is for the 93-94 season, so it's really the 94-95 hockey set. So even though the cards say 1995, they did that because it's a really late year release. But it does throw you off because they have a 94-95 set and then they have a 96-97 set. They actually separated the two sets out with a gap in between. So there is no 95-96 set. That 1 year is just, it doesn't happen. And part of the reason why it is kind of confusing, where they obviously have the 95 Fleer logo on it, which really kind of cements the idea that it's for the 95-96 year. They also used the same design approach that they used in the other three sports across 1995. So as far as they're concerned, instead of starting the year, the sports card year off with baseball, they started it off with hockey and then ran it through basketball. That's the best way to think about it, but it certainly is kind of misleading. Now, the design for 1995 Fleer, or in this case, technically 94-95 Fleer, is it's a mess of designs. Now, the backs are all the same. So they have a team color on one side and they have a photo on the other side, but the fronts of the cards are all very different. And they're very different, chaotic designs, some of which aren't that bad, some of which are absolutely terrible. But there are 4 different conferences in hockey, and so there's a different design for each conference. So that means that a quarter of the set is one design, a quarter is another, another, and another. And if you take the set and reorder it by conference, then all of the teams, the design looks the same, and then you shift over to another design for all of the next conference, and at least the card set has a cohesive design aesthetic to it across the 4 different designs. Otherwise, it's just really jumbled together. Now, the set does not have any subsets. It doesn't even have any flagged rookies. It does have a couple of checklists at the end. That's the only other thing that's special in the set. Otherwise, it's just straightforward, where you start off at A and you end up with W, and you move on. But the simplicity of the set is built on the fact that Fleer had gotten so heavily into inserts that by 1994 they were putting an insert in every single pack. So there are a number of different sets that are added into the packs. So there are some sets that are really easy to get and other ones that are more difficult. So I'll refer to the easy ones as pack fillers. And the designs, they had some fun with some of these designs. Like right off the bat, we have Franchise Futures, which is a card that, okay, in this case, I really wish that I could show you the opalescent quality to the card that is very difficult to see. I mean, for crying out loud, when I did the rankings of the best and worst insert cards for rookies, and I included this, I never even noticed that there was an effect on it until after I was done and I was putting the card away for this video, that I ever saw the effect and went, oh, whoa, wish I'd known about that. But that's the thing about this card. There's a really interesting effect that you don't know unless you actually have the card, not just in your hand, but you actually give it the opportunity to come through. It's cool, but it's understated. The next set is Headliners, and this is one of the pack filler cards. Not that the Franchise Futures are rare cards. They come through at a less common rate, but the Headliners is one of those cards that comes up all the time in packs. It's a pretty easy set to put together. It takes 2 boxes, but you can put it together pretty simply, and it is a very, very simple card. A full bleed image, and then the foil on it is I guess it's like a pewter or a steel color, not entirely sure. But then they also had another pack filler set called Netminders, which is at about the same rate in packs. This horizontal card is all goalies, which is why they're all horizontal. And here the design is a lot more present, where the card is completely covered with a color. So there's nothing cohesive about this set when you put all the cards together, because the overly bold colors on the card backs definitely take away any potential for the cards to look like they go together as a set. And then Rookie Sensations is the toughest one to get. This is a card that is... Okay, so here we have a different effect than we had seen with the other rookie cards. In the case of Rookie Sensations, this card has, for the background, it's matte. But then all of those, I don't know why they went with bubbles of water. That's, for hockey, I don't expect that you would see a lot of bubbles, well, maybe on a face mask. But all of those bubbles are actually glossy. So it's a glossy and matte contrast between across the entire course of this card, which is an interesting idea. But it's not a very, very clear effect. Whereas when you go over to slap shots, which is easier, this is closer to the future franchise rate of availability in packs, these cards have the same thing, but you have a much bigger field for the matte surface, and then the glossy portion is a lot more clear in contrast. So here, this is where the effect comes through beautifully. And that was what they did for 1995. So it wasn't very ambitious. They didn't bother with a Series 2. They only have 5 insert sets, so pretty basic. But like I said, they skipped over the 95-96 year, and it wouldn't be until 96-97 that we would get, well, frankly, the other Fleer set. And so for the 96-97 set, you would think that they had made a wildly different design, but actually it looks like it would have been one of the designs in the 1995 design catalog. Here, in this case, they have kind of an aura around each player, and then they have a faded background so that there's a very clear separation between the picture of the player and the background. And then they have kind of a 50s, 60s type of a logo spot for the team logo on the card. And then they do have a little bit of gold foil on this card, which is nice, right around the oval where they have the name. So they have a little bit of that going on, but otherwise it's a card that is not designed to be a well-designed card. It's designed to be kind of interesting and different for whatever it's worth. But yeah, that was how they designed the cards. And the rookie cards in the set, they do have rookies here, are designed exactly the same way. They just have the 96 logo on there to denote that these are rookies. But they do have a subset in 96, which is League Leaders. Each one of these cards has 4 panels on it with different, basically the top 4 players for the record. Now, technically, each of these cards is dedicated to one player, where on the back they talk more about him and he's featured on the back. So these cards are dedicated specifically to one player, but they're also dedicated to all 4. So they do both of those at the same time. And the checklists are done a little bit differently than the previous year, where in this case, the entire front of the card is dedicated to the Sporting News sponsorship of, well, the whole set. I mean, all of the player cards do have a little blurb written by the Sporting News organization. So it is themed for the entire set, but on the checklist, they have descriptions about different terms for collectors to understand better the nature of the terminology in hockey. So, and that's across all of the checklists. But then that's all they did for this as well. So they don't have parallels, nothing like that. It is more complex, but it is still, it has kind of a simplistic quality like the previous year, because they have a lot of inserts. But by 1996, they weren't putting inserts in every single packs, even though we have basically the same number of insert sets. Almost all of these insert sets are harder to get. The easiest of all of the inserts is the Art Ross Trophy, and that's the spirit of all of these inserts. Only one of the inserts is not about a trophy. All the other ones are. So Art Ross Trophy is a very big set, 25 cards, I believe, and it is a design that looks more like a Skybox Impact type of an aesthetic, with a lot of stuff kind of going on. And then they have silver foil for the 2 main pieces of text. They have kind of an early to mid 20th century Soviet quality to it. It's a very expressive kind of design, but it's also a design that certainly looks like it fits for the most common card to pull out of packs. The next insert set is Calder Candidates. And for Calder Candidates, this has a cool feature on it, which is that the foil on the card has a rainbow effect, but not a holofoil. It is literally a red to yellow to blue to a repetition of the colors of the rainbow that are all fixed. So there's no effect to it. It's just that they kind of glow in an interesting way. This is a card that I personally really like because of how playful and fun and energetic and youthful it is, even though it's a pretty difficult card to come by, so the cards tend to be relatively expensive for this set. But actually all of the inserts outside of the Art Ross trophy cards fit that bill. The next one is Norris Trophy, and the Norris Trophy cards, this is an embossed card. Now, the text that is embossed is very difficult to read because it's not very distinct, because the whole point of the card is that the embossing is what really carries through on the card. Even the team logo is embossed. So it is, but it has a really nice fancy look to it. There's an elegance to it that I think it really comes through well for this card. I can't say the same thing, however, for Pearson Award cards, because this is a card where they just chromed the surface of the card. The design is kind of muted because they didn't play around with the chroming, they just went to town with it. So it doesn't have the same spirit as we saw with the Norris Trophy cards, where the Norris Trophy cards look like they're supposed to be fancy and special and rare. The Pearson cards don't have quite the same spirit to them. Then we have the one non-trophy set, which is Rookie Sensations, and that's because that's what they did every single year. But the Rookie Sensations cards look back at the previous year, where most of this card has a matte finish on it with just the picture of the player glossy in contrast. But unlike the previous year, where when they did this, there wasn't as much of an energy to the card design, here this again has a major energy to it that is not quite at the same level as the Calder Candidates, but it fits very much into that same mindset. And then we have one last insert set, which is the Vizina Trophy cards. And the Vizina Trophy cards have a heavily lacquered surface on the card, which goes really well with the background for each one of the cards, that makes this card feel, it feels unlike any of the others. And it's a great way to close it out, but it gives you the ability to see that they did something different on every single one of these cards, and it really provides a wonderful array of experiences as you go through them all. But that was what they did for the 96-97 set, and I need to note that that is everything for these, because there is also a 1996 Fleer Picks set, which was done alongside Topps. And Fleer Picks is a topic I'm going to do completely separately, because it is literally Fleer and Topps, and they have all of their inserts, which are very difficult to come by. And so I want to be able to look at basically the two brand single set on its own. But understand that you may come across a 1996 Fleer card that doesn't show up here. Look for the Pix logo up at the Fleer logo. And if you see that, then that's what it is. It is that other set, which I'll be getting to at some point when I finally get all the pieces together. But that is what I've got to talk about for literally for Fleer proper for hockey. They just didn't do anything else. They did Ultra for a few years before. They did some Flair cards, some Ultra cards, but Fleer proper just never really found a place in the hobby. And really, Fleer as a brand wouldn't do much past 1996-97 anyway. So it's very brief, very simple, and interesting that they skipped a year. So yeah, if you do have any questions beyond what I've talked about, please ask me in the comments below. If you haven't subscribed, please do so. And thank you very much for watching.